Today at Manchester Theatres, I am in a great mood because I am here with singer, actor, performer, voiceover artist, the powerhouse that is Tim Howar, because he is going to be performing with the Hallé Orchestra at the Bridgewater Hall Saturday, the 13th of July, in a one-off concert, stage and screen. Now, fans from across the globe will know Tim as a music star, a co-singer of Mike and the Mechanics. He has literally treaded the boards across the globe in epic shows such as Chess, Rent, Rock of Ages, On the Town, Tommy, Joseph, Hello Dolly, Phantom, Les Mis. The list literally goes on and on. Tim is also a much sought after vocal artist, again performing in massive venues worldwide with some of the world's biggest orchestras, including our own Hallé. So we are so thrilled to be inviting you back to Manchester, Tim. We cannot wait. It's going to be brilliant.
Oh, I love it. I love Manchester. It's kind of I always thought of Manchester as my spiritual home for music because when I was a kid growing up, I was really into obviously New Order, Joy Division, the Smiths, and so it was always this hallowed ground, to go to Salford, and I did that. When I first came to the UK, of course, I went straight to Manchester and tried to see all the places that the Smiths were and everything, and for me. I had no idea that there was such a fantastic orchestra like the Hallé there. But luckily, I ended up hanging out with a guy called Richard Balcom who took me into, and that's when I first played. And actually, the very first venue I ever played with an orchestra was Bridgewater Hall.
Oh
So
wow!
and so for me, it's always like the start of my orchestral kind of singing.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a chameleon. I grew up singing classical music and boys choir up until the age of 21, and then mixed choirs and things like that. So it was always to go to a great place like that. It's got a great acoustic and such a history. It was a real big thing for me, and I never forget it. Every time I'm on the Bridgewater Hall, I always go, "This is my first." So
Oh.
it's always amazing to always come back. I have a great time in Manchester, and like I said, it's a spiritual place for me. And that's a bit, it's a bit like kooky to say that, but
No,
for
but
rock and for orchestra and for all that stuff, it really was the place for me that I wanted to come see first in the UK. Isn't that weird?
yeah, it's amazing though. It's amazing.
Mm.
And so this
Rudy
particular show,
Collum. I mean, there's so many bands that came out of there, Stone Roses, and they just
I know.
reshaped what we now know as, and also kind of really kept it a very. This is going to sound weird, but a very British thing that's worldwide and transcends kind of that and just becomes great music. And certainly the Hallé's got that. There's such a variety of music that they do. It's I guess you have it's very spoiled in Manchester. Let me say that.
We're so spoiled, honestly. There's so much going on all the time. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And like you say, the Halle, they do so many different styles and themes and things like that. So what can you tell us about this one then? Stage and screen. What can we
Well, it's
expect?
obviously, musicals that were on the stage and screen, and so and so that's basically the we go to some of the traditional ones like that are actually, have been so kind of revered that they're still up there, like West Side Story. That the new movie of it, I thought was one of my favorite movies that came out recently. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic version of it because it was very true to form. It really tried to bring you back to that place, that Hell's Kitchen in New York that's now gone because Hell's Kitchen, to buy an apartment in Hell's Kitchen will cost you over $1 million. So it's not like what they grew up
Uh,
in. It really got that. But then the original movie and certainly the original stage play of it, I remember seeing Jerome Robbins Broadway. This is years ago when I was in New York and just thinking, God, that's something I would love to do. And I've never done West Side, but we're doing excerpts from that. And I've always sung stuff, from that. And it was, I knew years ago, there's a very good casting agent called Vinnie Liff out of New York who was who basically gave me kind of my big first start. And he's no longer with us. Vinnie Liff is not. He was a great guy, but he always kept saying to me, "I want to cast you as Tony in West Side Story." He never got to
oh,
because there was never a production that was the role was available in at the time. But he always
yeah.
said to me, "Oh, you know what?" And then he cast me as Marius in Les Mis, and I'll never forget that because that was kind of another big step for me moving to America to do Les Mis, and and I guess that was kind of his consolation prize to me, which is a great
I mean, it's a
consolation
big one,
prize.
right?
So we're doing stuff from, from that, and that was a great segue because we're doing a little bit from Les Mis as well in the show, and the heavy hitters, the songs that we all know and those songs that we all love, and also I think the songs that are orchestrally very beautiful. So that's, we go everywhere from the kind of the classic musicals all the way through to the modern day musicals like Wicked and Dear Evan Hansen, and so it's
Yeah.
quite a sing, and I love it. And I'm sure that they will be more than beautiful playing all that great music.
Well, it sounds exciting, and alongside you, you have the fabulous Juliet Crosby as well. So,
She's a find, here
yeah,
she's done so much TV and film in Ireland and everything, and then she opens her mouth and she sounds like an angel, and she's a really terrific person and young and talented and all the things you'd want in kind of a leading lady. And yeah, really just a really decent, lovely person to be sharing this concert with. And so I couldn't be in better hands. Stephen Bell, obviously, conducting.
yes,
He's great. He's just a great guy and great energy, and he knows how to lead a band really well. And I just think he's fantastic. So, and the guy never stops. He's working all the time. So,
I know.
yeah, he's got the chops. We just did a concert, in Dublin together and had a great time doing that,
Oh,
singing book, another one. And I think Stephen knows that when he has the right people in place, he can make leaps like that. And and it's nice to be part of that group that he includes in those big leaps.
so do
Yeah.
you kind of get any input then when you're invited to do these kind of concerts? Do you say, "Oh, I've never sung this one, and this would really suit me, and I'd love to do this," or "Oh, I'm not going near that
I
one"?
just basically go with the flow. I think that, because I'm a bit of a chameleon vocally, I think they do sometimes they'll choose stuff like, in this one we're doing West Side Story, which is very much classically kind of musical theater, and then we're doing other stuff that now we're going to right to Dear Evan Hansen. But I think he's chosen with Juliet and I, we're both kind of that type of singer. We like to take on the poppier, rockier stuff, and then we also can do the legitimate stuff. It takes a certain voice to do that. I know if you were to go more to an opera side, they would only sing operatically, and then they wouldn't really be able to do, and they'd sing beautifully operatically, but there's
Mhm.
no real variation. Whereas myself, I get called to do so many different types of things. So I think if you're called to do that style, you need to do that style very well. So, and I'm very lucky. I grew up in a very musical household where all my brothers and sisters were attached to a different type of music. And so, I grew up with my one brother loving jazz and kind of standards, and my other brother liking country and traditional music. And then my sister was into Brit pop, well, not Brit pop, but Brit rock, like Led Zepp and T Rex and Bowie and all that. And then, my brother Donovan was very into electronic music. So, it was always the Mike Oldfields and the Jean-Michel Jarre and Kraftwerk and things like that. And then myself, I was into punk rock when I was growing up, and kind of alternative music, and most of that was either from Australia or from Britain or whatever. And so I was lucky to have and then classical music. Classical music was the base of everything. We kind of grew up in a very working class neighborhood, which is probably why I kind of attached to Manchester a lot, because my granddad was from Leeds. Don't hold that against
Oh,
me, but so there was always kind of like a northern thing going on where, not saying that what, but there was so much going on in the south that anything that came from the north, I was really close to,
yeah.
and and there was always that kind of like, my mom was always like, you're going to have some culture. So she took us to plays and things. And, I think now looking back, we must have kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in our neighborhood because we were going to plays but my dad was an auto body mechanic, and my mom was a hairdresser. So, everybody had a real job in my area, but I think they wanted us to have this larger sense of the world. And certainly when my mom took us first to England to visit some family, that kind of got me thinking about, that it wasn't so far to go across the Atlantic Ocean, but it is far. It's a long way from Western Canada.
Yeah.
But I'm British now, and so I'm the, I just love the variety of music that comes from, the minute you go north of Sheffield, it's all over the place, and I think that's tremendous. The Northern Soul thing is fantastic.
Yeah.
Rock is fantastic, and certainly the orchestras are great. They're world class, and Manchester is God, it's changed so much in 20 years, isn't it?
Yeah. A lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank goodness, because there is a real audience there that loves music,
Yeah.
and if it's done well, they're mad about it, and it's great. It's just really, and that's very encouraging to be part of or be included in. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's great. We've got new venues popping up all the
Yeah,
time. It's
you know.
brilliant. Yeah.
Just wish the hacienda wasn't turned into condos.
I know,
Wish it
yeah.
just kept some of it, just a bit. So
Yeah,
because it's
just a
such
little
a
bit. Yeah. Never
hey,
mind.
wishful thinking and this hindsight's a wonderful thing. But I think in some ways you had to keep the economy going, and whatever was going to keep
Mm,
Manchester going, you had to do it. So,
yeah.
and certainly, like I said, there'll be new venues, and those
Yeah.
deserve just as much of a chance as any, thing that was semi-nostalgic.
Yeah. At least they've kept the name. They've kept the name on it.
Yeah, of course they have. And
Yeah.
Bridgewater Hall, it's always been for me a real kind of like I play it with my band as well. Whenever we come to Manchester, we always Micah Mechanics always plays there, and it just seems like a home. So
Yes.
I hope the concert's a cracking concert, and it's we've done some of the songs together, Stephen and Juliet and myself, and I think they've come off really well. So fingers crossed it'll be the best version of that when we
Yeah.
do it in Manchester.
It will be. So, what does a typical day look like for you in these kind of one-off concerts? Because it kind of, I just always think there's so much when you watch them. There's clearly so much work in it, but then
Yeah.
it's a one-off thing, and you're all in different places, rehearsing separately, and so
Yeah.
when you all come together,
Well,
how
you've
does
got to
that
be able
look?
to. I think the thing is preparation is everything. So
Yeah,
you've got to be, really know the music really well because you have the one rehearsal to rehearse with the orchestra to get things to iron out any creases or any blips there might be, and sometimes those are things in the score that might that maybe there's a wrong note somewhere or there's a different version of this. So we iron out all those things, and you just have to get over the nerves. I mean, for me, I've sung so long that I kind of know my voice and what it can get up to and what I need to give it in order to be able to do a long day like that. And a variety of music that is there's not really pulling any punches. You can kind of not mark it through the rehearsals because obviously the sound levels need to be set and you need to kind of have an idea of what you can get up to. But you can certainly, I save something for the main performance always because you
yeah,
don't want to give everything up there. But you have to trust Stephen and you trust Juliet to kind of have their stuff, and then you just trust yourself to go and give the best performance you can in the moment because that's the one thing that I think is that's so attractive about live performances that it's now. There's no other time but then, and it's that version. And so you have an obligation to the audience to give them the best version of that song that you have at that moment because they're all there waiting to, cheer you on. And it's that union of the crowd and the orchestra and the voices that makes it really special because it only happens once. And in any, and that's what I try and stay there in that moment so that I can give them the the real me and certainly the best voice that I can, and things like drinking lots of water. That's 4 hours before you sing, not 2 hours. You have to drink
that should be
water.
like.
It's just it's a physical thing. You need to overhydrate your body, but
Yeah.
if you're singing, because there's such small chords that are underneath the larynx that goes up and down and pulls them, high notes go up and low notes go down. And so when you understand the physiology behind the voice, then you can kind of help to look after it just like it's any muscle. But then there's that other bit, which is the creative force, which is the magical force, which is that thing that gives you the coloring of those words and voices. And so it's staying in that moment where you're now and knowing what story you're telling. So if it's in West Side, putting yourself in the, in those kind of boots. And if it's certainly something different, like if we're doing a song from Aladdin, it's putting yourself in that romantic space to be able to paint that picture and then giving it a go because it's in the moment. And if you can keep it in the moment, the audience is already there live. So that bond is something that's only happens that one time. And I love that. It's scary because, I care. And, and I'm not going to say there's no nerves. There's tons of nerves, but I've done it so long that I'm used to the nerves.
Yeah.
So that's a bit weird, isn't it? To kind of go used to the nerves and do it anyway, but that's pretty much it. I'm so lucky. We're so lucky to be able to do this. These are hits. There's nothing in this program of music that isn't a big hit.
Yeah.
So when you get a chance to sing a bunch of winning songs, it's great. And then you also get to sit back and listen to the orchestra play through some fantastic versions of, it could be the prelude to or the overture for a musical, and there might be a bunch of different songs from the show in there, and it's great to just listen to it and be part of that. I really enjoy that just as much as I do the performing.
It is. It's a magical sound. It's a brilliant venue. And like we've said, you've been there a few times now. And so if Stephen or anyone at the Hallé kind of turned around and went, do you know what, Tim? You've paid your dues now. You're one of us. You've worked here a lot. You get to pick the next theme. So what would you pick? Like what would you love to
Oh my
do?
goodness, what would I do? I don't know. I think I
Lovely.
might do like, oh, like, there's so many. Okay, so there's some really good theme songs. You know what I would do? I would do, whenever those credits roll on those animated movies, and they always have those
Yes.
duets and they have the solo songs, like, um, I might do something like that where it's like hits from the TV shows, or like, because there was a lot of great big songs that came from TV and film, that written by arguably some of the best composers on the planet, and maybe I'd do something like that, like a TV and film, but
Yeah.
just the big hits, like I Can Go the Distance by Michael Bolton, and the Peebo Bryson version of these things, and I might try and do that because I
Yeah.
love that stuff. I go back to it all the time, or singing stuff from TV shows like not Happy Days, but it could be everything like
Yeah.
Happy Days, or it could be something like there was a TV show called Welcome Back, Kotter, that had a great song, in it, and it was a great singable song. Or things from like Grizzly Adams, or things like from the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. I would love to have a crack at, or something from the Muppet movie or something.
Oh,
'Cause there were great
yeah.
songs, like Rainbow Connection. We forget Paul Williams, he won everything when he was out there. When I was a little kid, that was, he was like a god, or like, and so to do those things with an orchestra would be really great,
Yeah.
and a little bit wacky, because I think, when it's done well, you can do all this different type of music, and there were so many different themes, from like, Bonanza through to like, it could be anything, like Some Mothers Do Have Them, they're all,
Yeah.
but people are attached to it, and so
Yes.
I think that would be great to do a kind of a transatlantic thing where you'd have hits from America and hits from, you know, Great Britain, and just to have a sing of it, because I think they're great songs, and I'm sure we could find enough. It would be either be that, or I would love to do a show that was heavily influenced by Tony Bennett, and who's my other man who I love, Rat Pack, Sammy Davis Jr.,
Mm.
who wrote Smell of the Roar of the Grease Paint, Smell of the Crowd. It was he wrote Who Can I Turn To When Nobody Needs Me? What was that? Anthony Newley, my lovely friend
Oh,
in the other
yes.
room. And so I would try and do something like Anthony Newley, maybe with a bit of Tony Bennett, and maybe Sammy Davis Jr. Like, I love those tunes, because there was a bunch of stuff written for Sammy Davis Jr. for BBC TV shows that he'd done,
Mm.
and these big orchestrations. And I don't know if they're Nelson Riddle or whatever, but I know the orchestrations are out there. But I think that they would, and I'm certainly Anthony Newley would probably have, and my wife's also saying Leslie Bricusse. I got to say that, yeah. You can't have those two, without each other. But certainly, I mean, Anthony Newley wrote a lot of stuff that was, well, he was beloved by the Rat Pack, wasn't he? And he
Yes.
was, and I don't think people know him as well as they should know him. He wrote these heart-wrenching songs, or even Lionel Bart wrote heart-wrenching songs. So to maybe champion something like, that, maybe we could go into the BBC sessions of these guys, because they did such great stuff. And as a kid growing up in Canada, we had, the CBC is basically the BBC with a C in the front, and we had ITV, which is basically ITV Canada, which showed
Yeah.
everything from. So we had the two Ronnies, we had Morecambe and Wise, we had all the, we had these shows, and I grew up with them, going, well, that's is part of my life. Whereas maybe in America, you wouldn't have seen that type of stuff. You would have seen the American version, maybe on PBS, which is their public broadcasting service. You
Yeah.
might have seen some of the, things, but you certainly wouldn't have seen the wealth of stuff that we got. So I'd like to maybe champion some of that. So maybe a TV and film thing, or maybe a jazz infused set, because some of those orchestrations that were there for the BBC were, at the time, I think they're buried now, since those guys,
Mm.
done for them, for their TV shows. And I would love to resurrect some of them, because I think they'd be sensational to have a sing at. And novelty music, because if you listen to those guys sing back in the day, they were singing to the rafters. They really were. I listened to the song After Today, which is from Dr. Dolittle, that Lester Brickus and Anthony Newley wrote, and then Sammy Davis Jr. did a version of it. And if you try, I defy anybody to try and sing it. It's fast and it's high and it's beautiful, but I'd love to have a crack at that. So there you go. There's my 2 cents.
There we go. Well, do you know what? I'm there. Because the nostalgia, even as you were saying some of them things, I was like, and my head was pinging. So the nostalgia,
and you'd have, you could introduce a younger audience to this fantastic music, and you could also strike up a bunch of nostalgia. But it's not nostalgia because it's live.
Yes.
And that's one thing I think that I loved about Manchester. People love live music. You could listen to a track, but you'd be clawing to get yourself to a club to listen to them do it live, because it was different, and it not just, there was a big thing going on between Liverpool and Manchester at the time. It just seemed to be highly competitive, and it really spurred on some incredible music. And that, I don't, things happen in London, but a lot of people come to London as the place to kind of crack the big smoke, the big area. But the synthesis of it happened because, people were probably growing up trying to get out of their working class neighborhoods or whatever, or just crazy life. And so they just gave everything they had without knowing they couldn't do it. Nobody said you can't do this. People just defied the odds. And now look at, I went to go see New Order about a year ago, and it was sensational. And they played some Joy Division, but I won't forget that, because they were still fantastic, Like it's almost like they hadn't aged, but everybody's aged, if that's something that comes to everybody. But this music that we're doing, certainly in this concert, it's 80 years old, some of it, West Side, it's so no, not 80, maybe 70 years old. So, and it's still like crystal clear, and it's still relevant. People are still warring about, people are still finding love in these difficult situations. So it's important music. And certainly like the newer themes like Wicked and finding oneself and one's true identity through, either through fault like Dear Evan Hansen, or through this kind of virtuous character like the witch has in Wicked. Those are big things to talk about today, because I think we all have to step up. And certainly music speaks a language that doesn't have any barriers, does it?
No.
Attach themselves to it through a tune or through the lyric, and they might not even speak the language, but they'll understand the song. And so maybe it's a bit of that we get to paint with.
Yeah, and I think concerts like this, when you have these, like you've said, such a variety of epic songs, they really just speak to people and allow people to feel and connect. It's connection, isn't it? And that is what is going to be so amazing. Tim, honestly, I could carry on speaking to you all day, but I know you are a very busy person. You're doing concerts.
Well, guess what I'm doing today? I'm gonna go find a board to tile the downstairs bathroom, and I'm gonna tile the bathroom floor, and then I'm gonna get to the walls, and I'm putting some mirrors up, and I'm gonna tidy the garden. And so, welcome to the real world. When you're not doing stuff, you're doing things around the home. And I'm lucky enough to have a home that I can work on. We the fixer-upper here, and so my wife's off to work she's a musical director, and she does Matilda the musical, so she's off to do that today, and they've got a huge cast change, so she's busy doing that, and I champion her. She's awesome. She's a great keyboard player and wonderful musician. So we have a very musical family. Then I'll pick up my kid at school, and then we'll do tea, and then we'll do bedtime and all the regular things that
walk the dog.
Then walk the dog. He's already been walked. My wife walked this morning. We took the kid to school. So it's a lot of regular things, and I'm so happy I live in a normal life that those things happen, because they're as valid as any of this performing. I love the performing, and it's great to be able to sing for my supper and to have mates who still want to hire me to do that, because I genuinely think I have something still to give, and there's something nice about coming from, where I come from. I came from a little teeny farm town in northern Alberta, and then we moved to Edmonton because we lost our farm. And, I'll never forget that my roots are based in this kind of like really far away. Happy and lucky to be one of the foreign guys who gets to work. Well, actually, I'm British now, so I'm not really foreign anymore. But I get to work in America, and certainly Broadway and LA, and those places are great. They're wonderful places but this is my home, and certainly the Hallé and Bridgewater Hall is, like I said, the start of my orchestral career, and I don't ever forget that. So it's going to be great coming back.
Well, we cannot wait to welcome you back.
Well, I thank you to the fans. They're fantastic. It's always packed, and it's they're always so warm and receptive. And so hopefully we'll put on a great show and give them, give them something to talk about.
You will. It'll be the talk of the town, Saturday, the 13th of July, stage and screen with the Hallé Orchestra at the Bridgewater Hall. Tim Howar is going to be there, Juliet Crosby. It is going to be brilliant. Tim, thank you so much for your time today. Honestly, you've been really generous with it, and we cannot wait.
Yeah,
Thank
me
you.
too. Me too. Thanks so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Take care.